Hello and welcome to Ensure Your Client's Exemption Certificate Portfolio is Compliant with Automation. This 50-minute webcast is brought to you by CPA Practice Advisor Magazine and Avalara. I'm Gail Perry, Editor-in-Chief of CPA Practice Advisor. Before we get started, let me explain how CPE for this webcast works. The webcast is 50 minutes and qualifies for 1 credit of continuing professional education. If you plan to earn CPE for attending this session, you must stay with us for at least 50 minutes. In addition, we will display 4 polling questions during the webcast. In each poll, you need to record an answer, as this is our verification that you are still watching. Later today, you will receive an email from CPA Practice Advisor containing a link to your CPE certificate, assuming you met the qualifications for certification. Please note that we can give CPE credit for multiple people at the same location. So if there are others in your office who would like to attend this event at the same computer, please have them join you now, and we'll have you send us their email addresses after the event. At any time, you can enter questions in the Ask a Question box that's provided on your screen, and our speaker will try to get to as many questions as possible during the presentation. Questions not answered during this broadcast will be addressed by the speaker afterwards. If you have any difficulty answering the polling questions online, you may post your answers to the polling questions in this Ask a Question box and we'll record them there. Note that the slides for this event are available for download by clicking the Event Resources option at the bottom left of your screen and then clicking on the PDF file that's displayed. Also, the archived version of this presentation will appear on the CPA Practice Advisor website after the event ends. Note that CPE will not be available for watching the archived version. We're grateful to Avalara today for making this event possible and for enabling us to offer a free CPE credit to our attendees. Today, we are joined by Maria Tringali, Senior Solutions Consultant at Avalara, who will be presenting this webcast. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you, Gail. Nice to be here. Shall we go ahead and dive in?
The floor is yours.
Sorry. We're going to be talking about my favorite subject today, exemption certificate management. So I know that many of you have clients and prospects that you work with, and not sure how often exemption certificate management comes up, but I'm sure if you're on this webinar, you wanted to learn more. So Avalara, we specialize in this and we have great products and solutions to support. So let's dive in and talk a little about what Avalara does and how you might be able to help your customers do a better job of managing those darned exemption certificates. So a little disclaimer from out there, we hope you find the discussion helpful. Of course, it is not legal advice or tax advice. I'm sure you all say the same thing. My name is Maria Tringali. There we go. Just go back, sorry. My name is Maria Tringali. I'm a Senior Solutions Consultant here at Avalara. That means I specialize in a couple of products, one of them being exemption certificate management. And I've been with Avalara for 10 years now. It's my 10-year anniversary, and I specialize in working with our partners and customers on all of the tax compliance things that might not be the tax calculation piece, which everyone thinks of as kind of the thing that we see as consumers, but there's a whole lot of other things that our customers, the businesses need to think about. So my daily work, I train salespeople, I train folks internally, I meet with accounting firms, I meet with prospective customers and Avalara customers about doing a better job of tax compliance. So our agenda for today, we are going to talk about the compliance landscape currently for tax-exempt sales. What is going on out there in the environment? And then what are the 4 challenges that we see? I probably talk to 6 or 7 businesses a day at least, sometimes more. And let's talk about what kind of challenges we're seeing out there, what's not being done well, what could they improve on. And then we're going to talk a little bit about some best practices that you can recommend to your clients as far as doing a better job of managing these certificates. And then, of course, we are going to leave time for questions, as Gail mentioned. So first, let's dive into the current tax-exempt landscape. And what we mean by that is that it's generally understanding tax-exempt sales. So when your clients, or if you're a business listening, when you have customers that want to be tax-exempt, we need to collect the corresponding documentation to prove why you don't charge tax. And you probably know this, but I'm just going to reiterate, and it's a good thing to reiterate to your clients if you are a CPA, that in the United States, we decided that individuals were not self-remitting use tax. So in the 1930s, states, or the Supreme Court, and then hence the states, decided that businesses, sellers, would be responsible for collecting tax from the actual customer and send that to the government. It's not actually the business's liability. So there's a lot going on when you take that responsibility to prove why you didn't charge a business sales tax. And that's what these certificates actually represent. So it's super important that we know what we're looking at and that we collect the right form for the right reason. And of course, if you have nexus in a state, you have to be charging tax. And if you are not going to charge tax, you have to have proof why you're not. And there are different types of transactions, different types of reasons why businesses might want to be exempt from sales tax. And I usually like to remind people as well, because the word exempt gets used in many different ways when we're talking with businesses. One is a product could be exempt from sales tax like services, but we're not talking about that. So we want to talk about when the business does not want to pay the sales tax on an otherwise taxable item. And that might be, on one reason, the buyer's business status. Who is that buyer? Are they a healthcare organization? Are they an educational organization? Are they a not-for-profit, or are they government? So they themselves are tax exempt for this specific purchase. These are kind of the harder ones. So that's one reason. The other is the intended use of those goods sold. Are those goods intended for resale? Are they going to be used in the manufacturing process? Is it for agriculture use? So depending on what the use of those goods are after the sale, that's the other reason why the customer might want to be tax exempt. And we as sellers have to have that proof. So looking at an example, and sometimes as buyers, we are in that same situation. So this is just kind of a food chain of how it works. So you have a components manufacturer, and then they might sell their components to the parts manufacturer. That parts manufacturer becomes a buyer. They're going to provide their exemption certificate to the seller. The seller is going to collect that certificate from the buyer. And then that parts manufacturer then does the same thing happens while they sell their parts to an auto manufacturer. So in that case, the seller is a parts manufacturer. They collect a certificate from the car manufacturer. Our manufacturer is supplying theirs. And then you have a car dealership. Same thing happens. Sell them the cars, they buy the cars. And then we finally have the last person that actually pays tax, and that's the end buyer, the consumer of the car, and generally that customer is not providing a tax-exempt certificate, unless, of course, they are an agency or government agency that can be tax-exempt. But generally, we pass it down the line that way. So that's what, 1, 2, 3 different exemption certificates that had to be provided along the way. And really, I suppose the components manufacturer could be buying raw materials as well and providing that. So there's a lot of certificates that might come into play in the United States. And this is what we need to remind our clients of, is that you're just sort of the pass-through for this tax. Those are all the certificates I just described. Gail, I think it's time for our first poll.
Sure, okay. Our first polling question is, what sales tax services does your firm offer? And your options are sales and use tax returns, sales tax returns filing, exemption certificate management, all of the above, or none of the above. So check the one that's most appropriate to you, and then click the submit button on your screen, and we'll tally these answers for you and show you the results in just a moment.
Sounds good.
Okay, we'll leave this up for just a few more seconds. By the way, if you have any trouble answering this on screen, if your device doesn't show the question or something, you can always post your answer in the Ask a Question box, and we'll record it there. Okay, looks like we've got all our answers in.
Great.
So you guys should be seeing on your screen that it looks like sales and use tax returns is the largest section, followed by all of the above for people who are attending today. So that's pretty cool.
Oh, great. Okay, that's good to know. So we've got kind of a variety of what people are. Perfect. Don't forget the type of questions that you have in the Q&A. I do see there's one question right now. Since I'm paused, I'll go ahead and answer that. How often do exemption certificates need to be updated for a customer? So we'll talk about that in just a little bit. But as with everything in the sales tax business, or most everything, the answer is it depends. So there are 46 states that have sales and use tax rules and laws, and about 20% of those states do have a variety of expiration date rules to those exemption certificates. So we need to either follow the rules in that state, or you can recommend that you just renew the ones that don't expire every 3 to 5 years. That's what most businesses do, just so you don't end up with an outdated certificate, an outdated form, a previous officer of the company, that sort of thing. So best practice is to renew them, but you definitely have to renew the ones that have expirations, and that is not an easy task. So that's actually part of the challenges, and let's go into the tax compliance challenges for those who sell to businesses that want to be tax exempt. The first challenge is nexus. I bring this up on every single call, and I'm making the assumption that most people on this call know what nexus is. It's the responsibility that you have to a state to collect the tax from the buyer and remit it to the government, and that is based on your either physical presence or your economic presence in that state. So let's talk a little bit about that. I find that people say, well, we only have offices in a couple of states, so we're just registered there, and we know what those certificates look like, and we don't need any help. Well, I always start my conversations around those economic nexus laws that were now passed 6 years ago. So in the beginning, there was physical presence. So it used to be prior to 6 years ago, prior to 2018, businesses only had to register to collect and remit sales tax from their customers in the states where they had a physical presence. And even if you were selling nationwide, it didn't matter. Then in 2018, the Supreme Court said that states can actually make their own laws to require sellers to have to register in their state based on the amount of sales going into their state. So if you think of states like South Dakota, that's where the South Dakota versus Wayfair case that got to the Supreme Court came from. South Dakota said, hey, we don't have retail stores all over our state, but we want a cut of the goods that are being used in our state that at the time were being sent in by Wayfair, and of course now by everybody, right? Goods sent into our state, we want a cut of that sales tax, or we want proof why that business is not paying sales tax. So they were the ones who kind of poked that bear, if you will, and started the conversation. And very quickly thereafter, every state that has sales and use tax laws now has an economic nexus law in their state, and that varies. So you see the colors on my map here. You can see that the different states enacted different laws. So those darker states like California, Texas, and New York have a very high threshold that you have to meet before you register, but a lot of states have a lot lower threshold. $100,000 into the state of Washington is frankly not very much for a lot of businesses. So it's really easy to trigger nexus in states now without knowing it. And there's no alarm that goes off, so you have to proactively monitor your sales in these states and go ahead and register in states and start charging tax or collecting exemption certificates. The reason why I bring this up on this webinar is because it's very important for businesses who have a lot of customers that want to be tax exempt, because most of the states include exempt sales in those economic nexus thresholds. What I see happening every single day is that businesses just ignored these rules because they said, well, we don't have a shopping cart, a website, we don't sell enough, all of our customers are exempt, insert excuse here. None of those things are accurate. So most states include exempt sales, at least some type of exempt sales in those thresholds. So businesses that are selling across the country or even to just a few more states outside of where they have a physical building need to pay attention to those laws and added laws. And they're laws, not suggestions, that were passed over the past 6 years for every state, and understand where it is that that business needs to register. And they do need to register, and they do need to start collecting certificates from those states, those customers, pardon me. Make sure that those certificates are valid and make sure that they stay up to date. So as we're looking at my map here, back to that when does certificates expire question, Illinois, their resale certificate expires every 3 years and their manufacturing certificate expires every 5 years. How are you supposed to know that? And it's not even printed on their certificate. You have to go into their website, and there's very fine print that says when they expire. I use as an example when I train sales reps to try to find when do Illinois exemption certificates expire, because it's a very hard task to figure that out. So with this exposure across the country, businesses need more help from you, CPAs, and more help from partners like Avalara to get this stuff right. It's nearly impossible to do manual these days. But maybe you would be amazed, maybe you wouldn't be amazed at the number of businesses who still aren't paying attention to these laws and how they affect their business. And so now, once we see that we have nexus in additional states, now we potentially have an exemption certificate problem here, right? So these are two examples. These are real Avalara customers. So the one on the left is a manufacturer in New York. They sold 99% to OEMs, resellers, never charged tax. Well, the Wayfair ruling increased their exposure because they were sending items all over the country, and they ended up having to collect even more certificates, but they only sold to big OEMs, to big distribution a network. So they had about 75 certificates on file. And then after they went through this exercise, that 75 grew to 1,175 documents that they needed to manage. Well, now we've broken our Excel spreadsheet. We don't know the rules. We don't know the rules in all these states. We don't know what the form should look like. We don't have the staff to maintain over 1,000 documents and collect more and validate them. And on the flip side, on the right-hand side, this can be a much bigger problem. This customer sold to resellers and also did drop shipping, and they sold through marketplaces. And it turned out that originally they thought they were managing about 500 certificates, which is hard enough. But because they had additional exposure, they had to register in states, and they're shipping to a variety of states for most of their customers, they ended up needing to manage over 5,000 exemption certificates. So this can really grow and should really grow to make you compliant, because again, those documents are what's keeping this business from paying that tax out of their pocket to the state. It's not their tax. They're supposed to be collecting it from the customer and giving it to the state, and these documents prove why they didn't. So this can be a big burden on a business to manage more documents, types of documents. Where do we keep them? How do we maintain them? It can be a real added burden on the team. And as I've alluded to, the burden of proof is on you, the seller. The auditors are going to come, and we're going to talk about audit in a minute, and the auditors are going to come and ask you to prove why you did not charge tax to that customer. Even though you feel your liability is zero because all of my customers are resellers or OEMs or manufacturers, if you don't have that document to prove it, that's when the money can come out of your pocket, and there can be fines and penalties on top of that. So this is something you need to do up front, and you need to maintain. You're the one who's going to be audited. Now, might they go audit your customers as well later? In California, I know they definitely ask for a list of your customers. So they may go audit your customers, but you, the seller, is the one that has to prove these things first. All right, so challenge number 2. This is one that my colleague Wendy and I here talk about a lot we believe that we cannot forget the customer experience when we talk about our customers that want to be tax exempt. I know we have these processes in place where we collect a credit application, maybe a sign-up packet, maybe we send them emails, we have this little back and forth. Well, getting that exemption certificate from them should be easy for them, and it should be easy for you. It is part of getting invoicing right for your customers. It is part of getting them set up. I have a lot of businesses say, well, if they send us one after the sale, we just adjust off the tax. Why are you creating extra work for yourself? So Wendy and I always say managing exemption certificates right is also managing your customers well. Everybody's fighting for a little bit of the share of the business out there, and customer service is key. I probably don't go on one website ever that doesn't have something prominently on their website about how customer service is important to them. Well, they can type it on their website, but let's make sure we actually do it. So the experience is really important, and this is for your internal customers, your credit folks, your salespeople, customer service, as well as for that external customer. We need to make it easy for your customers to submit those exemption certificates, to know what form for the right reason in their state, or forms, maybe they have ship-tos in multiple states. We need to make it easy for your customers to provide the right form quickly. We need to make it easy for your team to collect it and not have tax expertise, because how would we know all the rules in all the states? How do you know that Illinois has 2 different expiration dates to their certificates? We need to make it easy for our team to do their job. We need to be aware that if we can't bill them properly, if we bill them with tax and they go, come on, wait, we're exempt, and then everyone has to go back and do a credit and a rebill, that's work for you, that's work for them. They can go on social media and say, hey, these guys can't even invoice me right, or my products were delayed because they were waiting for paperwork. So you don't want any of that to happen. So making sure that the certificates are easily managed, easily collected and validated, that's one thing off of your list, and that will help that customer get their products faster, pay their invoices faster, and your team not have to go back and make corrections. So those are things we probably don't normally think about when we talk about exemption certificates, but to me, it's super important. And then the other thing that I find every day is omni-channel selling. So most everybody these days is selling in multiple places. I talk to businesses that have 2 and 3 different ERPs, sales channels, divisions, multiple websites. One might be for one industry, one might be for another industry. We've got potentially adding B2C. We've got pushing B2B to e-commerce, which is what this slide is about. So instead of just brick and mortar, we now have marketplaces, and we now have e-commerce websites where we want our B2B customer to be able to buy from us. We don't have to have so many salespeople out in the field. It's quicker, faster. Businesses want to buy online without speaking to a human, just like consumers do. So many people are adding B2B sales to their website. So how do we bring in this signing us up, collecting certificates? You'd probably laugh at the variety of ways that I have seen businesses try to kludge something together. Oh, we provide the form. We email them the form. We put a link where they can upload it. We tell them what we think they should submit. And I go in and look at it, and they've got the wrong forms in there because they don't even know what they're supposed to be collecting. So it's important to think about where you go to market, and can we continue this efficient process of collecting and validating and maintaining / renewing these certificates in all of our sales channels. We can't just do it in one place. So B2B digital sales is growing really, really fast. Nearly everybody I talk to has either added this B2B e-commerce or in the plans for this year. And as I said, humans just want to buy online now. We've spoiled them with the computers. They want to go on and be able to buy without necessarily having to call you or sit on hold or send you a fax or call their sales rep. They want to be able to say, I need these parts and I need them tomorrow, while they're just working or maybe after hours. And these people are important to your business because they're the ones spending money with you. The easier you make it, the better off you're going to be. So you want to think about being able to collect and validate these exemption certificates across all channels where you do business. So whether that is in an e-commerce shopping cart, logged into my account, maybe there's a new customer sign-up portal, maybe you have in-store locations, maybe you sell over-the-counter, you've got to be able to verify them there. Maybe you do the standard mail, email, phone, And maybe you attend trade shows or you have salespeople out in the field. You have to think about exemption certificate collection and validation and allowing that customer to be exempt in all areas where you complete sales now and where you generate revenue. It's really important. And then, of course, even though, I always like to remind people, even though you're not charging sales tax for them, we have to that customer, we have to make sure that we're making it easy. So if we're not managing those exemption certificates right, that can create a negative customer experience. Customers don't like providing documentation, and that can hold up sales. They just want to buy something and have it go through. And our employees are not compliance experts. So our employees still need to understand enough to help make your business compliant, but we don't expect them to have gone to a state and local tax practice school because it'd be a lot more expensive if they did. Even then, I don't know how you can remember the rules. So that's my first three. I'll go into the fourth one, I think, after our next poll.
All right, this is our second poll question. Remember, you need to answer 3 of the 4 poll questions in order to qualify for CPE credit. So this question is, how many of your clients have a need for a document, or not for a document management, for a exemption certificate system? And your options are 100%, 75%, 50%, less than 25%, none, or I don't know. So choose the one that is most appropriate to your practice, and then click the submit button. And we will tally these results and see how this looks across the board. Okay, just a few more seconds. We'll leave this up for you. And again, if you have any problems answering this question online, you can just type your answer in the Ask a Question box and we'll record it there. So let's go ahead and share our results. It looks like more than half are at less than 25%. So they have some clients with needs for this.
Great. Yeah, that's what I find. A lot of businesses need to do this. And we'll talk a little bit, thank you for doing that. We'll talk a little bit about kind of what businesses are doing now and how they can improve upon that in just a minute. All right, thank you, Gail. On to the fourth challenge, which is audit risk. You all are CPAs, at least most of you, so you know that exemption certificates are kind of low-hanging fruit for auditors, right? Auditors love to look for things that make them a lot of money. And the truth is, a missing certificate is worth a lot more than getting a tax rate wrong, because a missing certificate is no tax charged on that order or orders at all, which is different than charging 8% tax instead of 8.5% tax, right? That's a little bit of money. So auditors love to audit manufacturers, construction, and the wholesalers because there's a lot of exemption certificates and also a lot of use tax. That's a different webinar. But those two can be hard to manage, and auditors know that. And the most common mistakes that they find are nexus oversights. That's why I cover that, or not oversights, but not registering in the right states, exemption certificate management, and misreporting use tax. So this is a really, really important to keeping your business from having money come out of its pocket and go to the government that doesn't need to. Remember, you're just the pass-through. So if you manage it right in the beginning, you won't have any expense. You won't have any liability to the government. However, these audits can be painful. Even though they can be completed quickly, they can be very costly. Many businesses tell us it took 35 hours, weeks and weeks of time 10 hours, all kinds of numbers of time spent dealing with that auditor. You all know that. My CPAs on the line know how much work it can be. Our businesses need to be more proactive and have a process in place to make when they do get audited a heck of a lot easier and less risky and expensive. I talk with a lot of businesses that say, well, we had an audit and in about 9 months we were able to get what we actually owed down to X amount of money. But no one ever adds up all those man and woman hours spent over that number of months and arguing with the auditor and hiring a CPA to assist with that. There's a lot of expense that no one seems to identify. All they look at is what came out of their pocket. And in my mind, just don't create it in the first place, right? Set up a system so you're just not creating any liability in the first place. And I'll cover this again, but reason for audit is usually sales tax rate errors, but then there's a certificate, not filing things on time, and consumer use tax are really valuable to auditors. They know what to look for in a sales tax audit. So enough of the bad news. Let's talk about how we can help our business, or you can help your customers' businesses do a little bit of a better job of managing their exemption certificate. So I always like to remind businesses that the tax rates part is just the tip of the iceberg here. So the tip of the iceberg is what we see as consumers' tax calculation. But the truth is businesses need to be concerned with selling outside of the U.S., those exemption certificates, putting some of our business online, being prepared for an audit or minimizing that audit risk, filing on time, making sure sales tax returns are completed accurately and filed on time, customer satisfaction, we already talked about that, use tax, again, a different webinar, and even researching and understanding what our products and services are that we sell and how the government treats them, especially if you're a business that does big bids, big RFPs. We have to understand the tax compliance related to that project long before we get to an invoice and actually charge them tax. So exemption certificates is just one of these things, but it can be a big thing for a business that is, 75, 80, even 100% exempt for their customers. So we look at this at Avalara, is getting compliant, is understanding how the laws affect you. Where do you have nexus? How are your products and services taxed in each state? Get registered where you need to. Step 2, get those exemption certificates updated and validated and set up for renewal. It's not just about collecting. This is the biggest thing I see. Every business is good at asking for something. They may or may not get it. They may put it somewhere. It really doesn't matter where they put it. It matters that they just collected something. They never validated it, or they don't know how to validate it, and they certainly never keep them in a place that's easily available for renewal. They don't know the laws. They don't know there's 2 different expiration dates in Illinois, so they have to be maintained. And then we need to be able to calculate accurately when sales tax should actually be calculated. And then we need to be able to report that on time and efficiently. So those are the steps that Avalara has found over the years in working with many, many businesses that will get you to a tax compliant place that you can also maintain. And so if I twist that conversation into software applications, it looks something like this. So we first need exemption certificate management. We need a platform. We need a source of truth that can help us collect the right document, validate that document, and maintain it and keep it renewed for us. The second part is a tax determination engine. That is what most people think of as a tax calculation engine, but really we need to do a tax determination. We need to see, is that customer, do I have nexus in that state? Is that customer exempt or not? If they're exempt, I don't have to charge any tax. If they're not exempt, then I need to actually calculate the right amount of tax on that order. The tax determination would talk to your exemption certificate platform. So you don't want to mark your customers exempt in an ERP blanket in one state forever, because most accounting platforms only allow you one yes or no button, is this customer exempt? It does not say, most accounting platforms aren't able to say that Gail's business is exempt in one state but not in another state. They haven't given us their certificate for this other state, so we have to charge her tax. They don't have a way of doing that. So we have to move out of thinking that our accounting systems are also our tax compliance systems. They're not. They have blank fields. Sometimes, on occasion, they have some tax rates, but those are only rates. They can't get to variable taxability, sales tax holidays, all that other stuff. And then lastly, we need to connect all of that information to a system that can help us prepare those sales tax returns and file them on time. The more states we have Nexus in, just like my map, the more ways we're going to market in my omni-channel slides with all these different places where we collect revenue, the more complex it gets to fill out these returns. And I know a lot of the sales tax returns forms are online now. It makes me laugh when people say, well, they're online, we just go in and fill them out. That doesn't keep you from having to run reports, kludge data, figure out your use tax, get reports out of your e-commerce, combine all these things together, right? That just because the form is online, that actually makes it harder because states now change the fields all the time. So the report you ran last month, next month they might want different data. So as that Nexus footprint grows, we've got to think about a holistic tax compliance partner and engine. And automation is really important. You need to look at, as I said, where you have Nexus now, but also maintain that eyeball, and automation can help you with that. You want to maintain and continually be looking at where your business might collect sales, and you might need to collect sales and use tax or collect exemption certificates. So automation is going to help you do that. Avalara has a free Nexus tool. You can just go on our website. You see this link in our slide deck here when you download the slide deck. If you want to do a check for your business or for a client's business, you can simply put in a little bit of information on where they make sales and what they sell, and we'll do a quick kind of look-see, cursory look at where the business might have established a presence, and maybe we need to take a deeper dive into whether, where those laws apply, whether you want to register and that sort of thing. It's important that we bring automation into our businesses. Then there's that first part of my three-part slide there. So the exemption certificate, this is not just document management. You need a platform that helps you collect the right form before there's an actual sale in place, or at least on the day of the sale. We need to make sure it's valid, and we need to maintain those. So we need, the reason why this isn't a circle, because that is ongoing. We need to collect those, validate them, collaborate with each other and all of our places we go to market, as well as keep renewing those and keeping those up to date. So an exemption certificate management platform is essential. If your business is 50%, 25% and up more selling to buyers that want to be tax exempt, you need something way better than a customer service rep and a document management system. That just doesn't work anymore. And I'm going to add to that, oh wait, I think we had a poll. Sorry, I might have skipped over that we had a poll. Sorry about that, Gail.
Yep, that's okay. Time for poll question number 3. How do your clients store exemption certificates collected from customers? The options are paper copies only, scanned images only, electronic images created for all certificates, but paper is still retained also, a solution other than those listed above, not applicable, or I don't know. So choose the option that's most appropriate for you. Again, if you have any problems answering this question, you can post your answer in the Ask a Question box and we'll record it there. And then click Submit when you're ready. And we'll keep this up for just a few more seconds. Okay, I think we can go ahead and share these results.
Sure.
It appears that about 1/3 of our audience does both electronic and paper, but it's kind of across the board here.
Okay. I do find that when people say electronic, they usually mean they've just scanned them in as a PDF, which is really just an image of the piece of paper. So it's not really any better than having the paper. Everyone goes, well, we have them electronically. Yeah, it's just an image. It's like pictures on your phone. You still really don't have a good system in place to validate them as well as to renew them, nor do you have the data off of them or know the the expiration date or know the requirements of that form. So PDFs are great, but they really are not much better than having a piece of paper, except that they might be more accessible to people who need to see them. But that's good information. Thanks for asking that question. All right, let's head on so we have time for some questions. So I want to add that one of the things I always recommend to businesses that are thinking of moving to automation, probably should move to automation, is we call this managed services at Avalara. So that's what it says on the slide in front of you. But let me explain what it is. This is experts, and some CPA firms do that. This is experts taking a look at those PDF scale and that paper and making sure that it's valid. So it's providing validation services. So when you move to automation, you really want to make sure that you start with a fully valid portfolio of these documents. So we do that in two ways, or we look at this in two ways. One is what we call one time, and that means that is the project of getting you from kind of current state to a fully compliant portfolio of these things. Let's look at that current list of customers time shipped to state and make sure we have a valid document on file for each of those and each state. Then we've done that, right? We've moved you from the paper and PDF into a platform. But from there forward, you're going to add customers, and some of these certificates are going to need to be renewed. So there's also some maintenance that needs to happen. So I know some CPA firms provide this, but also technology firm like Avalara provides this. So we're going to continually validate new documents that come in and renewals for those that do expire. So it's important that you think of that in both ways. Some people think, oh, can you just validate these and then we'll be done? Well, you're never done because of the renewals and the new customers added. So you have to continue the maintenance. Technology is great, and our technology is top of the market, absolutely hands down, but it doesn't do everything. Technology is not as magic as we like to think it is, so we still need those humans to help keep us compliant. So it's important to think about that. We also can think about integrating. I love this, integrating with our systems. We can integrate customer records to accounting platforms. We can integrate with e-commerce websites, meaning a customer can go in when I'm logged into my account. If I have a new ship to in Texas and I haven't given you my certificate, I can do that myself. I don't have to pick up the phone and call you. Don't have to create an order that charges sales tax. So you can integrate these platforms with wherever you go to market. And then, of course, you can always use our API. If you have custom systems, you always use our API and connect an exemption certificate management platform into wherever you go to market and whatever you use. And that's really important because, again, you want it to apply. You want to make it easy for our customers all across the board to work with us. And then as in my food chain earlier that we talked about in the auto manufacturer, you also want to think about your own purchase exemption certificates. And I saw actually a question. I'll answer that question in a second. So you want to think about our vendor exemption certificates that we provide as purchasers to our vendors. So when we're on the other side, right? As I always say, if the business isn't using Avalara, then they're not sending you a link to provide that. So you can use our system to create and send your purchase exemption certificates to your vendors proactively, meaning they'll bill you properly the first time and forever, and you can maintain those as well. Proactively renew your Florida, Arizona, and Alabama ones every year. So systems like ours generally can collect from the customer as well as help you provide your own purchase certificates to your vendors and have a great history of that. So in summary, we want to digitize these certificates, and that doesn't mean PDF scale. We want to be able to collect across all channels. We want to turn that paper and PDF into pixels. We want to turn it into usable, trackable data, and we want to remove the guesswork from both our customers giving us the wrong forms and our staff not knowing what to collect and not knowing that it's valid. So we need technology to do those things. There's just far too many rules. And, you know, of course, you all know this, but why do you want to automate compliance across the board? We want to be more accurate, efficient. We want our customers to be satisfied. We don't want any money coming out of our pocket. That's our risk management when it doesn't need to. And we have to support growth. We have to support growth into different markets, different products, mergers and acquisitions, you need software to help you. And we did a recent study. We did a study with a Forrester where they actually interviewed many of our customers, and they came back with some results of actual literal time and dollar savings by using Avalara versus not using it before. So we have people saving 30 minutes a day from staff just for exemption certificates, and saving $96,000, hundreds of thousands of dollars in what they actually had to pay in audits by using a system that keeps them compliant proactively. So it's important to note there is a financial gain. This is not just a nice to have. And I'll leave you all with this. So whether you are a CPA who's consulting with your clients on sales and use tax issues, or you are a business, a CFO or a controller, and you are a business managing your own business, these are the questions that I always ask when I'm working with a business and trying to help them get compliant. These are the questions I like to ask. How many states are you registered in? Do you know where those laws apply to you? Should we look at that? How much of your business is to customers that want to be tax exempt? The reason why I ask that is it shows you that percentage. It shows you how valuable, those documents actually are. Remember, 0% tax paid on orders. That's a lot of money if you can't prove you have that document. So most of your tax liability, if you're a highly exempt, your customers want to be exempt, you have a lot of your sales tax liability to that state wrapped up in those documents. So it's really important to ask, what percentage of your business are you collecting these certificates for? Oh, okay, we can help you with tax rates, absolutely, but we also need to focus on this side of the business and make sure those documents are accurate. How do you plan to collect new documents if you have to register in new states? Are your current processes scalable in new states, new initiatives, mergers and acquisitions? Can you afford order delays, that sort of thing? So I always say, now in our virtual meeting rooms, so maybe in our old-fashioned meeting rooms, print this out, stick it on the wall, and sit down with your team and go through these questions. Is what you're doing now really appropriate? Why do we still have paper? Where are these documents? Are they in a file cabinet? Like, why are we still doing this on paper and PDF? We've got to get this one last piece into the digital world. So I'll wrap up there. I know there's one question that I saw. I'm going to leave this up on our screen and let's scroll down. I saw one question that said, a charitable organization has applied for a sales tax exemption certificate. How long does that take? It's been 2 months. I can't control what the state does when they get it. So you can apply for, and that's actually, I'll kind of lead that into a question. Once it's submitted, it's really up to the state to review and provide it back to you, and that response time definitely varies by jurisdiction But I do want to mention, if it does turn out that you need to register in additional states, and you want to have your own purchase exemption certificate in that process because you're going to have goods shipped into the states and you don't want to pay sales tax, quite often on a sales tax registration form for a state, there's a little checkbox that says, do you also want to apply for your own purchase exemption certificate during this process? So quite often you can check that box, or whoever's doing the registration for you, whether it's Avalara, your CPA, or a partner, another partner, you can check that. But not always. In some states, you have to register to collect and remit tax, which I always find funny. You have to register to collect it for the privilege of collecting and remitting tax in that state. And then once that's complete, then you have to go apply for your resale certificate afterwards. So that's really dependent on the state, but I highly recommend you do that if you are registering in new states. Go ahead and get your own purchase exemption certificate while you're at it, because these Nexus laws apply to you, they apply to the vendor you're buying from, they apply to the vendor above them, and they're all rolling downhill. So at some point, your vendors are going to have Nexus in your state, and you're going to want to provide your own exemption certificate to your vendors, because everyone's got Nexus in more places nowadays. Let's see, there's a couple other questions. Great, another not-for-profit question. Not-for-profits want to make a purchase in another state will need a sales tax exemption certificate for that state. So yes, if you, wherever the goods go, that's the state that wants either the tax or the exemption certificate. So if you are having goods shipped into another state and that vendor has Nexus and they want to charge you tax, then yes, you have to provide an exemption certificate for that state where you are having the goods shipped. So yes, they're state by state. And that's why I was saying kind of earlier that you want to get your own purchase exemption certificate for states, and also that list of customers that comes into the software to verify you have all the certificates is customers times shipped to state. So every state you would have a different form. Are there some exceptions? There are weirdly, some states allow you to put a different state's tax ID on their form. I think Alabama is actually one of them. You can use their exemption certificate form, but you can put, say, your Texas resale number on it. They actually accept others, but that's not a hard and fast rule. There's a few exceptions, but really the best rule is to just register in that state and get your own purchase exemption certificate. I wish there were more of a magic answer to this, but there's really not. Client will be starting business in Florida for capital improvements via contracts for buildings. So they need to register for sales tax. My research shows that no sales tax, there's no sales tax for this type of work in Florida. I don't know that off of the top of my head, but that's absolutely where a tax research tool, remember on my, my iceberg, there's a tax research library that CPAs have, and Avalara can license to CPAs as well as to you individually to understand how your products and services are treated in each state. Also, it will tell you the nexus laws, whether that might be affiliate nexus, right? If you have a partner and you're doing capital improvements, maybe you're not setting foot in that state, but your relationship with affiliates might also be establishing a presence there. So again, 46 states have, or 46 jurisdictions have tax laws, and there are 46 different laws. So I don't have everything memorized, but we definitely have resources to help you get those answers. Let's see. Can someone help me understand what the retailer's responsibility is after they sell 100,000? Sure. So that goes back to those economic nexus laws. And actually, I can switch back to that slide. It might be easier if I can do that. Yeah. So on this slide, this shows that each of the states established different laws for economic nexus, meaning how much stuff is shipped into my state, even if you don't have a physical presence. So if I'm shipping goods into Washington, but I'm based in Utah, how much am I sending into that state? So Washington is $100,000 is the threshold. So once I've hit $100,000 in sales during 1 year, then I have to register in the state of Washington, and I have to begin collecting tax or collecting exemption certificates. So you have, again, as I said, there's no magic bell that goes off out there in the universe. You have to watch this and evaluate this annually at your business. If you've crossed 100,000 at any point, you need to contact the state of Washington, get registered for sales and use tax, and be able to charge tax when needed and have a process in place for collecting Washington exemption certificates and applying them at the time of sale. And that would be any state, and the thresholds are different by state. So another thing I didn't cover was in Avalara's automation, if your sales are coming through and we're doing tax calculation for you, tax determination for you, we're also tracking your sales. So we have a dashboard. I don't have a screenshot of that today, but we at Avalara have a dashboard that will show you when you might be approaching that 100,000 in Washington, and you might want to proactively get registered or reach out to a CPA or SALT practice partner, or just reach out to Avalara, and we'll help you understand the rules and help you get registered in the state where you need to be. And I don't see any other questions, but I want to add one thing to that. I know that a lot of times businesses choose not to register. They might say, so back to my example, they might say, well, all my sales into Washington are tax exempt. Well, that may be, but according to these laws on the next slide, you still are supposed to register if that's the case. But I do know that a lot of businesses, I don't advise this, but I know that a lot of businesses just choose not to register because they feel like they don't have any liability in that state. Well, first of all, that's not the law. The law says you have to register and report in even if it's $0. But if for some weird reason you're deciding not to or you don't want to yet, please promise me you will at least collect those exemption certificates. So at least if Washington comes after you to audit you and you haven't registered, they're going to be mad about that. But at least you can prove that you didn't have to charge tax to your customers because you've got this stack of valid certificates that are maintained here. Here's proof Washington State Auditor that all of my customers are manufacturers in Washington. They've given me their certificates, and that's why I haven't remitted tax to you. So please, please, please make sure you're collecting these certificates, if nothing else, or if you're going through kind of a phased approach. The certificates are what's keeping money from coming out of your pocket. And Gail, I don't see any other questions in my queue. Do you have any?
I do. I have a few more for you. And also, while we're waiting to get to those, I want to just pop up
Did I skip a poll? Or
we have one more poll. Yeah, we have one more polling question coming. So our last polling question, we're going to go ahead and post for you now, which is, would you like to learn more from Avalara about exemption certificate management? So go ahead and answer that, yes or no, thank you. And while people are answering that, I do have some more questions for Maria. First is, if my customer has Nexus and does not need a VDA, can Avalara help with state sales tax registrations?
Yes, absolutely. We have an automated way to register you in one or more states. It's an online tool, so even for you CPAs, if you don't want to go through that and you're working on some VDAs for some states and you just want to get them registered in other states, oops, I talked with my hands, sorry about that. Let's put that back up. We have an automated platform where you can simply enter your information, everything that we need to know to get you registered, and we'll register you in one or more states through this process. And we do that within just a couple of days. We will reach out to the state and get that paperwork filed within a maximum of 5 days. And then basically, like the question we had before, we kind of have to sit and wait for the state to respond back, which we don't have any control over. But the way the law goes in most states is as soon as we've reached out to them, then you're legal to kind of start the process of inputting automation, decide what date we want to start collecting tax, start collecting those certificates. So while we're waiting for that state to get back to us, we definitely want to be proactively getting the system set up to collect tax. You're legal to collect tax. The date you reach out to them, you should be collecting certificates immediately as well, and we can help with that. So that's a great question.
Okay, got another one for you. Once you reach that threshold and you register, don't you have to always file sales tax going forward, even if the next year you have no sales?
Yes, yes, yes. And even if you fall below that. So once you register in a state, generally you just stay registered. It doesn't make any sense to register and deregister every year. That's too much work for everybody. Nobody really condones that. So once you've crossed that threshold, that generally means your business is expanding. You're going to hit it again in the future. And yes, you do have to continue to file. Sometimes states will give you a quarterly filing requirement in year one. Sometimes they'll give you annually. Sometimes they give you quarterly. Then you can go back and appeal to them after the first year and say, see, we don't owe you any money. Can I just get an annual filing frequency, please? And most states will allow that because they don't want to do any more paperwork than you do. So if you're not owing them money, they'll quite often let you back that down to an annual filing. So at least once a year, let's go with that. You really only want to deregister if you really aren't going to be in that state. Again, maybe you're a big project-based business. We went in, we did this big project. I don't expect to have a project in Wisconsin for the next 10 years. Then I might deregister myself to save me a little bit of filing. But really, it's too much bother to do that if your business is growing.
Okay. While we're doing just the last couple of questions, I'm going to change the screen so we've got some contact information on there for you if you would like that. And also, next question, can Avalara help with whether shipping is taxable by state?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Yeah, can Avalara help determine if shipping is taxable by state basis?
Oh, yeah, of course. So that's part of the tax determination. My middle pillar on my 3-pillar slide, that's where we do the tax determination. So we connect generally with your accounting system, and then we're going to do a tax determination. And what that includes is, number one, do you have Nexus in the state? Do I have to do something? And if we said yes, do you have Nexus in that state? Next thing it does, look for an exemption certificate. If it doesn't see a certificate, it proceeds with the tax calculation, and that is calculated right down to the line item. So whether services or taxable clothing can be taxed differently, shipping, freight, handling, services, software, it looks at every single line item and determines how that item is taxable in that state at that location, and what the breakdown of all those local jurisdictions are. So for those of you who fill out sales tax returns, you know what a pain it is to identify the local jurisdiction sales. So the software basically does all of that for you. So yep, that's an easy answer. That's a given.
Super. Thank you so much. Maria, thank you for an outstanding and thorough presentation. We hope all of you who attended today enjoy this webinar. You can find all of our upcoming webinars at cpapracticeadvisor.com/webinars. I want to thank all of you for attending today, for giving us your time. Thank you to Avalara for making this event possible and enabling us to offer a free CPE credits to each attendee. Thank you again, Maria, for sharing your expertise with us. We are going to present you all with a post-event survey for this event, which will appear on your screen momentarily. Filling out this form is optional, but we hope you'll share your feedback with us so we can continue to improve our webinar series. You should receive your CPE certificate in your email box later today. If you have any questions about CPE, you can contact me at gperry@cpapracticeadvisor.com. That's GPERRY at cpapracticeadvisor.com. And if there are more people watching with you today who need CPE certificates, send me their email address, gperry@cpapracticeadvisor.com. Thank you again. Our audio will end now.